Another draft science video presentation. Pyrrho comments. Yeah, it's possible to say, this should have played out and been done with a long time ago, and it's again just a demonstration that this idea of integrity, it just doesn't exist in people very regularly, apparently. And all these smart people who talk good science, talk about caring about the truth, all this talk, when you push comes to shove, they have no interest in the truth. They have no interest in the scientific method. They're just fanatics, and they just don't care. They'll resort to all kinds of bullshit to evade the fact that they're defending something that can't be rationally defended, and they'll just keep doing it. So, we've got Pyrrho now. We finally got him to answer a question, and his answer is completely provably stupid, and he won't. There won't be any counter argument. There won't be any way he can fix it. It's stupid. He said something stupid. And he's not going to back down because he can't. Because he knows if he gives 1 inch, he has to give the 6 inches, and then the 6 feet, and then the 6 miles. Because there is absolutely no evidence supporting the kinetic energy formula. There's no experiment where you see it collected, this extra energy, or this loss of energy. They won't show you where all the energy disappeared to. They won't be able to collect it. They won't be able to put a thermometer there and say, see, look, it created a whole bunch of heat. They won't show you any of it because it doesn't happen. All right, again, not a single link from all these people showing me the experiment that makes it clear that momentum is nonsense and kinetic energy gives the right answer. And again, there's no logical way to say these two things are compatible. I mean, it says it on the Wikipedia page, but there's zero compatibility. They're giving completely different answers to the same question. They say, how much does the ball weigh? And they're giving two different answers. You can't say these are compatible theories of physics. There's no compatibility. It's two different answers, 5 and 10, different answers. So, this is so bad. It's just so, it's such a corrupt and horrible rationalizations they're making. They're just so, you can only call it almost evil. They're so anti-science and anti the process of science, which is proving things, evidence. They don't have any. So anyway, so it says how momentum fails, : the coiled spring does not have a certain amount of momentum. So he really doesn't understand that force is momentum. Newton's equation is basically telling you that. It's telling you that force equals momentum. It's just, almost glaringly obvious. Okay, because he's saying, what is acceleration but a change in your momentum? That's actually what he's saying. Okay, it's not F equals ma, it's really F equals change in your momentum over a period of time. So he's clearly saying the change in your momentum is the same as saying, well, that's force. Force is the change in your momentum. So if you change your momentum, that means you had to add a certain amount of force to change that momentum, so you added a certain amount of momentum. You're adding momentum and calling it force, but it's the same thing. You can't get around, it's the same exact thing. All right, so we know a coiled spring does have a certain amount of momentum, and he says it doesn't. You push a spring back a certain amount, it's just like putting a certain amount of gunpowder behind the bullet. It's exactly the same thing. It's a certain amount of energy, and you'll dispense that amount of energy each time within the parameters of your how carefully you can measure the distance or the amount of tension. But that's what springs are famous for. It's not just like a sideline that springs have. No, this is exactly what they do really well. Okay, is to have a very consistent compression to force ratio. That's exactly what they're famous for. That's what they got Oscars for and everything. That's their profession. That's what they do. That's their whole job in the world right now, is to do that very thing, provide a consistent amount of energy. It's why garage doors work and all kinds of things work, is because the springs work. They do their job really well. All right, so stupid statement. And then he adds, and if you measure the velocities of different masses, you will find they have different momentums from the same spring. So from the same compression of a spring, he's saying you're getting different velocities from different masses. Well, that's of course true. So let's just read it again, because that's not what he's saying. Okay. And if you measure the velocities of different masses, you will find they have different momentum from the same spring. That is, the same compression gives them different momentum. No, it gives them different velocities. And the velocities are completely proportional to their mass. So if you put a light thing on the spring, it'll go fast. You put a little kid on a big spring, and it can shoot it a lot further than if you put a big kid on the little shoot the kid chair. Fact. But they'll both have the same momentum. The spring will give them the same force, which is the same. The force is the momentum. Force is momentum. All right. See, so then he says all you need is springs and the tracks. So he thinks, I've played so many of these videos, right? And he thinks I don't know what this is. It's just, he's so clueless, he's so irresponsible in how he engages in conversation. He doesn't really watch any of this content, okay? And what he does is maybe he hears it as he's walking past a room or something. But he's gotten little tiny pieces of things, and he thinks he's the expert, and he thinks you're an idiot. And that's how he approaches every conversation, and it just makes him just really annoying. Okay, and you too can see this for yourself. So a really stupid assertion, patronizing rubbish. He's absolutely 100% wrong, and yet he's just behaving as if Pyrrho knows, and he's done all this work, and he's watched all this stuff, and he knows all the truth, and it's just really dumb. It's really dumb. This is the kind of thing like a high school kid could beat him on the test. If this was on the SATs, do compressed springs provide the same amount of force to whatever you put in front of them? He'd obviously get the wrong answer, on the test. Shit. Anyway, so I say that assertion has now been totally debunked numerous times in my videos. This clip, for example. So I gave him the little 4-minute clip of Professor Lewin doing a spring experiment on a air track, and finding that it's exactly the same momentum. Doesn't matter what's on one side, doesn't matter what's on the other side, both sides get exactly the same momentum. The spring is essentially an explosion, and it just gives the same to this as it gives to that. If you can show a single piece of evidence that springs create different momentum when compressed the same, please provide the evidence. So that will never happen. So all the trolls will never produce this evidence. Now, Stephen Bro put together a pile of shit video where he did numerous experiments, and the only one that is truly convincing is the one he mocked, okay, as somehow being rigged in some way. The simplest one, where you compress a spring, shoot an object, and collect the energy with another spring. Two reliable mechanisms for collecting energy, and that one he mocked as piece of shit, and instead went for the clay type experiments. Look, I'll bang something into a row of staples, because everybody knows a row of staples is a great way to measure energy. Or I'll bang things into a fishing line, because we know, a fishing line is a great way to bang things into fishing lines. It's a great way to measure energy. Maybe not. Did you prove that somewhere? No. All right. So and then I asked him the question I'd really like him to answer. Okay, these cowards won't answer the question. Maybe the trolls have. Maybe the trolls actually do believe the 8-pound ball can knock down twice as many pins. That all the professional bowlers are silly because they haven't taken advantage of this double of their energy. Double of their capacity to knock down pins, and all they have to do is aim it right. Like somehow they can't aim an 8-pound ball. Yeah, I think one of them should be able to figure that out and take advantage of knocking over twice as many pins. Do you really think an 8-pound bowling ball moving twice as fast, has twice as much energy as a 16-pound bowling ball? So I didn't get an answer, and I won't get an answer, because again, he'll be committing to something totally ludicrous. His physics says it's true, and he knows it can't be true, and so he'd have to concede, yes, you're right, there's something wrong with this physics. You'd have to admit the simple truth, it doesn't make any sense. You're right. We should have some real world examples of this theory, this kinetic energy theory. There should be some evidence that it's right in the world somewhere. Some sort of glaring piece of evidence demonstrating that it actually works, that it actually gets right answers. And there's none. None. He can't show me anything. Now, somebody might be able to show, go back to the 1730s and show a clay experiment. So why don't they redo those? Now, apparently, some of the experiments were actually rigged, because some of the experiments done in the 1700s, when they were later redone, they didn't get the same results. So I can't even say for sure the clay experiments is exactly as decisive as they claim, because no one's done them, as far as I know. I deleted your other comment, as you are no longer allowed to lie in my comments. So, it's really irritating. He just keeps saying I'm against all mathematics. And he just did it again. And it's just so obnoxious. Okay. And he claims he cares about experiments when clearly he doesn't. Because clearly he will never show me one. The only experiment he ever showed in a video was one that even Stephen Bro concedes is fake. Where you put a bunch of aggravated waves, real water waves, and you create distorted water waves and then put them into two slits, and a single slit, and you get a diffraction pattern. Yeah, noise in, noise out, of course. If you put plane waves in, no pattern. That's the truth. Okay, so the only experiment he's ever shown was one intended to mislead. And that's it. That's all we have from Pyrrho, defending his physics. I mean, he's just scum. He's just he sucks dog's ass. I've almost seen him actually doing it. Trust me, he's a dog ass sucker. Okay, I deleted your other. You clearly have no respect for experiments or the scientific method. Repeating results. Claiming. I think I must have wrote it more than that. So anyway, so something's missing. It's my own comment. Something's missing. That's funny. So anyway, he actually he really just doesn't. He'll keep citing experiments that have never been performed. He'll cite experiments that aren't what he says they are. Okay, certainly, and as if they have been done in a certain way, just like Feynman. He's a preposterous liar. He talks good physics, he doesn't walk any good physics. All right, so then this other guy chimes in. DraftScience is in favor of physics that makes common, rational sense to him. So again, no, I'm in favor of science that is rational in the sense that we have reason to believe it. Okay, that actually showed some real evidence that it's not just a pile of shit. So yes, Newton successfully described the motion of all the stuff in our solar system that he knew existed, and he successfully managed to explain the moon and the tides and this and all this stuff with his mass times velocity formula, with his momentum formula. That's a pretty good demonstration that it works. Now, Leibniz provided nothing but abstract experiments, thought experiments, essentially, as evidence. So, why would I have reason to believe Leibniz is right? And most of the scientists in the time, let's just admit, Leibniz died not a famous, great, person. Nobody, he was buried by some rich woman, and that's it. That's the only person who showed up, is one of his benefactors. Okay? the rich family he worked for. That's sort of how it worked back then. Rich people would hire a scientist to be their family scientist. Anyway. So So, fuck you and this, whatever this is, okay? I believe in the truth being defended with evidence and arguments. That's what I believe. And I stated essentially in the last comment where I'm basically saying evidence is really important. And I've said the exact words in videos. So, fuck you for re-paraphrasing something I'm saying. Because I really don't, I'm not arguing it should be intuitional. I'm not arguing that everything should look exactly the way it should look, that we can't be in some way surprised or fooled. No, I think we can be. The argument is they think it all should be seems like is like. If it looks like an interference pattern, if it's the simplest pattern in the universe, we have to call it interference. Any on-off pattern has to be first assumed to be interference pattern. All right, anyway. A physics that isn't convoluted to the point it can only be explained via mathematics. Well, again, mathematics isn't all that convoluted, right? See, where are all these comments are broken. I mean, fuck YouTube. This is just such horse shit. I mean, they can't do anything right. Every fucking comment is cut off with no way to fix it. Ugh, fuck. Anyway. So, again, I'm not opposed to mathematics. This isn't about math versus blah, blah, blah. But clearly in this case, Pyrrho thinks the math is empirical. It's so perfect. The derivation is so perfect that there's no way it can be doubted. It must be true. It's like he's saying it's 2 plus 2 equals 4, then 1 plus 3 must equal 4. He's saying it's that clear, when clearly it's not that clear. All right. Pyrrho, I don't think you can, so this is Captain Grubb, obtain a greater momentum from the same spring setting by putting a lighter object, because if you could, that would make free energy. I'm glad you're conceding the point. I think he said something like, I am pretty sure Gary's right on this. All right, and then this mule CS cunt. I'm sorry. Reality doesn't cater to personal sensibilities, but apparently when they're your sensibilities, it's supposed to. So what is it supposed to cater to? You say reality says the kinetic energy formula is correct. Why can't you show me one piece of reality doing it? Why can't you show me one single piece of reality doing what you're saying it's doing? Collect the lost energy or show me the free energy. Do one or the other. But don't pretend you have proven anything, demonstrated anything, shown anything, given any rational person a good reason to believe. Any fair judge who walks into this trial, show them the evidence that you think convicts. Show them. Show me. Show me this evidence they should be overwhelmed by and say, yes, guilty. Yes, kinetic energy is real. Show me. So that's it. So Pyrrho never responded. So instead of responding to this assertion, which is pretty dramatic, you're full of shit, that's a lousy, that doesn't happen, you're a liar, it's nonsense, you're an idiot. Instead of responding to that, he posts some new piece of crap comment, which should be here. It's missing. There's always something. This must be it. All right. That's not it. That's it. Okay. All right. So Pyrrho, you just said that mathematics has nothing to do with it. So another fake quote. What I said is it has nothing to do with the history of this formula. Nothing. I clearly stated that. The formula exists because of Leibniz, and then it exists because of some fancy pants French people. It doesn't exist for good scientific reasons. It exists for really bad scientific reasons, really bad science, motivated by essentially religious rejection of Newton's austere physics, physics that didn't give human beings special powers. They needed to find something that made living things special. And the living force was this medium through which they could do it. And that's its origin. It's a terrible origin. Now, if you want to reclamate it and say they guessed right somehow their religion was completely consistent with necessary physics, you can make that argument, but you're not making it very well. You are the one saying you reject mathematical physics. So I have already told them I'm not going to accept that lie. I don't reject 2 + 2 = 4. I don't reject lots of formulas. So that's just a lie. I reject this one. There's no way it's right because it comes up with a completely silly answer. So you start with F equals change in momentum over the change in time. That's Newton. And they end up with F equals mv squared divided by 2. Now, if that were true, why wouldn't Newton just have said it? If there were all these extra squares and 2's and all this crap in there, why didn't Newton see it when he said it's a change in momentum? So they're saying a change in momentum over a period of time is somehow equal to, okay, mv squared divided by 2. I don't see anything equal about those two concepts. Anyway, nothing at all. If I filled in ahead of time what the change in the momentum was, and I put the time in, 1 second, and I put the change in momentum was, the amount of momentum gained in that second, and I put a number in there, 16, I could just go, 2 seconds divided into 16 is 8. There, the force was 8. If I use mv squared divided by 2, I'm going to get 74. I don't know how the derivative could be the same formula when they're going to get different answers to the question. If I already know the amounts and I put them in, I'm going to get different answers. So how is it an accurate derivative? No, that's right. It's not an accurate derivative. All right. And you don't want to learn how it works. Some of me says, yes, no, I really don't want to do abstract mathematics. I don't think it's very productive. Okay. You are saying that, not me. Yeah, no, I'm clearly saying I don't have a lot of confidence in mathematical abstractions as proof of reality. I have a lot of confidence in evidence. So if you could just show me the 8-pound ball knocking down twice as many pins, we don't have a problem. Set up 100 pins somewhere, and we'll throw a 16-pound ball, and then we'll throw an 8-pound ball into 100 pins. Your theory is that the 8-pound ball is going to knock over twice as many pins. If we have some container that keeps all the energy in there, when the pins go somewhere, they go into another pin. And in my opinion, it's just on its face nonsense. Okay. Learn how it works. You are saying that, not me. So again, that's nothing what I said. What I said is you have to pay attention to the history. And the history doesn't have anything to do with any derivative of Newton's physics. The history doesn't have anything to do with anything compatible with Newton's physics. The entire history is covered in Newton was wrong. That was the whole intent, was to create anti-Newton physics. That's the history you're denying. I thought you just didn't understand the math. Well, half of that's true. I didn't think you'd start rejecting applications of velocity and acceleration equations. So let's understand again. Newton says it's a change in momentum. You've decided that you're going to change that. Now it's okay. I mean, we'll go. All right. We'll have to do the derivative. So let's take a glance at it and attempt to appreciate where it goes wrong. And you can sort of see it. Because once they start playing with momentum, and then they separate mass from velocity, and then they end up adding an extra velocity. It's really that simple, right? The mass goes over here, and they keep the velocity here, and then they double the velocity, and then they put the mass back after they doubled the velocity. I mean, they've completely perverted momentum into the kinetic energy formula by somehow finding an excuse to say momentum is v squared when it isn't, clearly. All right, so let's go to the kinetic energy formula. All right, so instead of doing the straight up Newton derivative, they do this derivative. So maybe we should look at the Newton's original formula, which really is I have to go all the way back. Well, I don't know if it's worth going all the way back. Well, let's just the original formula is really the change in momentum, and that's it. So that's what F equals ma is really. Okay, F equals ma. Maybe that's here. Yeah, okay. F equals ma was really change in momentum over change in time. So it was really change in the mass times the velocity divided by the time. It wasn't F equals ma. But clearly you can derive it into F equals ma by just recognizing that if the mass is staying the same, it doesn't matter whether it's up here or over here. So you can pull it off. So right here everything's still fine, and you're getting it's a change in the velocity. So Newton says it's a change in your momentum. The change you're not changing the mass, so therefore you can sort of understand that all of the change in momentum has to come from a change in your velocity. So when you leave the mass the same and you're going to change its momentum, you know it has to be a change in velocity, right? So that's understandable. Now the problem with this whole concept, though, is understanding that this is only telling you force for some period within the velocity. So like a bowler, for example, they're not doing a perfect pendulum thing. You know, most bowlers have their arm bent in part of the cycle, and then at the end they push even harder. So they gain a little extra acceleration by twisting their body. Lots of other motions are going into it. So it's not a constant change in momentum. The ball is, at first it's just falling because of gravity. Basically you push it up with your arm and you let it fall from gravity, and then you start using all your body action to throw more energy into it, more velocity. So you can't change the ball, so all you're doing is changing the velocity to change the momentum. So that's understandable why you would turn it into an equation that's more focused on just changing the velocity. So it becomes F equals ma, because acceleration just has to do with your change in velocity. So now the equation isn't telling you the total force that the bowler is doing, right? So the equation isn't really intended for that purpose. I mean, it can be used for that purpose, but you have to be careful how you use it, because then you just have to eliminate time as being relevant, and what you're really saying is F equals mv. Force equals mv is another derivative of force equals ma. So if you're saying what's the final product of all of the force changes, the total force change will be the total momentum change, because that's exactly what Newton's saying. The force, the change in the force, the amount of force is momentum. It can't be changed in anything else. So if I make time irrelevant and I just slice it, all I've got is momentum. So and that explains the kinetic balls, because that's exactly what you have. You have momentum here, then you have momentum here, and they're equal momentums. There's no, that's it. You're done. So it's all about momentum. Now I dropped the battery. Well, whatever. I should be able to find it. It's not a singularity down there, as far as I know. Haven't really, gone all, there could be all kinds of things down there. Anyway, all right. So back to the derivative. So they're doing the derivative as if this is a work equation now. So they convert it into a work equation, like how much work is it doing per unit of time. How much work are you doing as your per unit of time pushing the bowling ball? And again, it's not going to be consistent, so this equation is going to be insanely convoluted. because you're changing the amount of velocity as you go through the process of, say, throwing a bowling ball. Now, there could be, you could take all of those little pieces and just average them and say 8. You know, you did 4 here, you did, 16 here, and if I go through the whole thing, I can cut it down to 8 or something, right? So you can average it, you can do lots of things, okay? But so that's why this derivative looks the way it does, because they're turning it into a work equation and then saying they're going to solve for force. All right. Now the dots in here mean dot product, which means, oh yeah, you do have to know some bizarre math, some abstract math, to understand what the hell that means. Does that mean you multiply? Well, what it really means is you have an abstract multiplier. It doesn't really mean you multiply, but it does mean that you can cross shit out as if the thing on the dot product is the same as something you're going to multiply. Something like, I don't know what the shorthand description of dot products are. But anyway, so they turned it into f times dx, this little notion that I'm going to take a little piece of time, not even a second, some millisecond of time, and I'm going to see how fast the ball is changing in all of those increments of time. And then I'm going to, the idea is to get some average in the end, obviously. And if you want to find a final velocity. Now, again, Newton's equation, in my opinion, was totally intended for circumstances where the force is constant, in gravity, for example. It's really not to be used to figure out this, because you can't even do the acceleration part. You can't even find the change in momentum over a period of time, because we can't even measure the time it takes for this to leave. It's so quick. This leaves so quick that there's nothing, and it's complete acceleration. I mean, it's not like the change in momentum goes from a little bit of change in the momentum and a little more change in the momentum. No, it actually leaves at 100% of the momentum. It almost as if it doesn't accelerate. There really is no acceleration. There's just go fast right away. It's like the force just goes from this object, goes right into this object, and there is no acceleration. There is no, I'm going 5, like a car. It's not like you stepped on the accelerator and this thing is getting accelerated. It's like it happens so fast that it doesn't even accelerate. It just gets to its maximum speed. So you got to understand, this formula is not perfect. You can't apply it to every circumstance. It doesn't have any meaning in that circumstance. So anyway, so the bottom line is they're saying that this formula, this mv squared over 2, is exactly the same as change in momentum over change in time. Okay, they're saying that those two things are equivalent. That's what they're saying overtly to you. They're saying a change in momentum divided by the time the change takes place is equivalent to mv squared. That force is the work. I would argue that yes, that's true. Okay, but I clearly wouldn't defend that abstract notion that this has anything to do with it. mv squared divided by 2 has anything to do with something as simple as the simple change in your momentum. So anyway, so they have this artificial dx thing. Okay, fine. It never shows up ever again, so you don't even need to pay attention to it, because they replace the dx with v dt. So velocity times time. Now, why would you multiply the velocity times time? Why would you do that? So right there I'm saying, okay, that right in the derivative right now we're already in big trouble, because what the hell is the dot product of v dt? What does that mean? I mean, why would I multiply? Velocity already has time in it. Why would I multiply a velocity times a time? It's already in a time. Velocity is already defined by how many meters per second. It already has time in it. So why would I be multiplying it times time? That doesn't make any sense. All right, so now we turned it back into momentum again. Okay, and so now we have the change in momentum over the change in time times v dt. Now, why would we do that, right? We already know that's exactly what Newton said right here is the final answer. Okay, oops, wrong one. Okay, oh no, wrong page. That's right. Okay, it's on the other page. So we already know that d dp over dt is not Newton's final answer. That's the definition of the force. And the force has to be the definition of the work. So we're already done. So why would I multiply this times something? Why didn't Newton say times our dot product v dt? Why wouldn't he say that if that had something to do with it? Oh, that's right, he wouldn't. And he didn't. Because this isn't a derivative of Newton's mechanics. It's a perversion of Newton's mechanics. An overt perversion. So anyway, so once you do that, right, then you get v dot dp, right? And we know that p has velocity in it, right? So that's vm. So now we have v dot mv. So now we've gotten the inclination that, okay, now we're going to multiply velocity times velocity. We're going to end up squaring the velocity because we now have two velocities in here. And so right here they do it overtly. So you can see it. V dot the change in the momentum, which has velocity in it. We know the m part doesn't matter because it's not changing. So that'll be extracted out. So now we have v dot v. There it is right there. D. V dot d. So now we have f dot dx equals v dot v. All right. Well, anyway, so you can't, who knows what all this dot product bullshit is, blah, 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 blah. And they derive it into, the square because obviously they have two v's here, right? V dot v, they overtly change that into v squared. Right there. It's supposed to be change in velocity. And they just get rid of the d. They shove it out here. So the change is now irrelevant. So you can see it, right? It's right there to show you. That's how it happened. So they turned a dot product, v dot v, into v times v. So the dot product somehow means you multiply velocity times velocity. Is that what the dot product means? No, I don't think it. I don't think it should mean that. And I certainly don't think change in should mean you square the velocity. So So anyway, Pyrrho says this is so obvious that any high school kid could know what the hell he's doing here. I didn't learn dot products in high school, frankly. I took trigonometry, and we didn't do dot products. Okay, so this is so obvious that everybody should know this is such great physics, and this answer is empirical. It is so well proven and so well established that nothing in this derivative could at all be flawed or full of shit. It's all solid, verified, proven, and we have zero experimental evidence. So I'm just saying we have zero evidence in the real world demonstrating this to be real. And he says I am not allowed to say, well, that maybe looks like bullshit to me. Not allowed. So anyway, there's nothing else to say. And it's not even finished, right? Because then they go through the integral part, blah, 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 blah. Just a pile of shit. So they change what you're looking for from energy to work, from force to work, for the purpose of doing this horse shit to come up with this contrivance that says momentum is really mv squared divided by 2, when that's not what Newton thought. All right. So yeah, it's enough on that subject. Yeah. So there will be no evidence. There'll just be more insults, more horse shit, but they will not provide any evidence demonstrating any of this crap. Now, Stephen Bro is claiming he's going to redo his video in some sort of better way, but we know he's not, okay, because that's not his agenda. His agenda isn't the truth. So we're not going to get more truth. We're just going to get more probably useful examples, in the sense that obviously they're the ones desperate, and all I can do is show how desperate they are, okay, by showing how much they'll cheat the truth. So with every little cheat of the truth they perpetrate, where they evade the real argument, evade answering the questions, evade providing any links to any evidence, more of that I show you, you've got to be understanding that you have good reason to doubt the integrity of this crap, when these people who are desperate to prove me wrong have to resort to desperate actions in opposing me. Instead of showing me wrong, they just keep perverting the truth and lying and distorting. So the more you see that, the more you should understand that that desperation on their part is for a good reason, because they can't make a better argument. If they could make a good argument, they'd make it. But they can't. So they have to resort to, like Pyrrho, keep lying. Keep saying, I hate all mathematics because I don't think this mathematics is right, is sound, is solid, is beyond criticism. I don't think it is. All right. I don't think all these places, all these equal signs, let's change it completely and put an equal sign. I'm saying that if I actually put the numbers in here, there's a point where these equalities won't be equalities anymore. If I put actual numbers in here, put the momentum in, put the time in, put the velocity in, these equations, these equal signs will no longer maintain their equality. There's a point in this nonsense where the equality breaks down and one side of the equation gets a different answer than the other side. That's the test of a derivative. So why doesn't Pyrrho go ahead, do your derivative and put the information in ahead of time because you know it, and then prove that all of these derived equations are exactly equal, that there isn't a flaw in here anywhere. All right. So that's enough of a video, I guess. So till the next time, and such and so forth and whatnot. Yeah, it's enough. I mean, look, I've already, all we can do, I mean, I can just keep saying it. I mean, doesn't the bowling thing really give it away? And then you have the wrecking ball analogy. I'm sure somebody can come up with some other analogies, right? There must be other obvious ones, ones that just make it so obvious that if this energy formula was correct, we would see a different world than we see outside. Jackhammers, all kinds of things would be done very differently than they're being done if this energy formula was correct. If lighter was better. A lot better. Twice as better. So this has been a DraftScience video presentation.